Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. I know it's been a while and it may look a tad different. And that is because we have introduced ourselves into the world of StreamYard. We're trying out this new streaming software fiasco, and so far, so good. I think hopefully we can optimize this for better usage, and it seems to be easier for me. It's easier for you guys, and hopefully we can, access more people and do some more live streams and possible interviews. So we'll see how this goes. But let's get into this story because it's one of the stories that should be screamed the loudest, but it's actually one of the stories that doesn't get mentioned anywhere in the mainstream networks on cable news or even really into our, dialect. And that is the world of Julian Assange because this person, regardless of how you feel or whether or not you're believing the narratives that are being, swallowed down at you, this really is a matter beyond politics. This is a matter beyond, whether you agree with the fact that, exposing war crimes is bad or not. It has to do with the fact that do we want a society based on principles and freedom of speech, a society where we're free thinkers, that we're publishers, that we're trying to access information to grow and evolve as a community of human beings? Or are we just, the kind of roaches that's the elitists and the globalists and the ruling class just wants us to believe and how we are just dumb enough to let this slide by, but smart enough to work the machines. That's what George Carlin used to make a joke about. That society is just they function the fact that we're able to get up, go to work, and get the ruling class a lot of money, but we don't know what the hell is really going on. So this is pretty interesting because even now, the biggest news publications are starting to wake up to this. They are starting to understand why this is a big deal. Because for a while now, they try to keep this on hushed tones. They try to keep the Julian Assange thing far away as possible. Oh, he's just a traitor. He exposed the Clinton war machine and the Democrats and then the war crimes that were going on. That he was somehow an evil guy, even though he was a publisher and a journalist. And every journalist should understand that prosecuting a journalist for doing journalism is dangerous to society as a whole. And now they finally come around to realize that. And who are those people? Well, turns out the New York Times, out of all places. I know it doesn't look like it because this is the text file version. This is how I can bypass the New York Times paywall. Because let's be real. I'm not going to pay a subscription fee to New York Times basically to pay for the war machine that I'm trying to expose. Why would I want to pay a subscription to expose the war machine by paying to the war machine? Just makes no sense. But this is where this gets really interesting. So it says news outlets urge U.S. to drop charges against Julian Assange. News outlets are finally coming to the realm to realize that this is a bigger deal, that this is actually affects them. And they didn't see that beforehand. They didn't see that and realize that until now. Until they realize, hey, Julian Assange is a publisher. Julian Assange is a journalist. And he's being prosecuted by tyrannical government forces and the military-industrial complex and the globalist elites from the UK to the United States and all around the world, prosecuting a man with principles. And this is a direct threat on journalism. This is a direct threat on freedom of speech and freedom of the press. So this is a bigger deal than people realize. And it says, in a joint letter, news organizations warn that the indictment of Julian Assange sets a dangerous precedent that could chill reporting about matters of national security. And this is an article from November 29th. And it goes on by saying the New York Times and 4 European news organizations called the United States government on Monday to drop its charges against Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks founder, for obtaining and publishing classified diplomatic and military secrets. In a joint open letter, the Times, the Guardian, Le Monde, Der Spiegel, and El País said the prosecution of Mr. Assange under the Espionage Act sets a dangerous precedent that threatened to undermine the First Amendment and the freedom of the press. Which is what people have been saying since day one about this. They've been saying about this day one. Again, regardless how you feel, whether you have personal vindictions against Julian Assange or you still think somehow he's still a traitor to the country because, he's not patriotic enough. He's not doing that faux pas of, oh, you just got to accept the American imperialism. You got to accept the American way, which is kind of funny because he's Australian. But whether you agree with it or not, this is the bigger picture that people are starting to realize, that prosecuting Julian Assange affects every single one of us. Every single one of us. Whether you're in journalism or not, or as a content creator, this affects me. As a viewer, it affects you. It affects every single individual against tyrannical forces oppressing individual freedom of speech, freedom of press, the First Amendment, and the ability to access information, which helps us grow and evolve as a society. Obtaining and disclosing sensitive information when necessary in the public interest is a core part of the daily work of journalists, the letter said. If that work is criminalized, our public discourse and our democracies are made significantly weaker. Mr. Assange, who has been fighting extradition from Britain since his arrest there in 2019, is also accused of participating in a hack-related conspiracy. The letter notably did not urge the Justice Department to drop that aspect of the case. And probably because of the fact that these news organizations are bought by corporations, and since the corporations are on the side of the government and they're coalescing together to prosecute Julian Assange, because obviously corporations are walking and laughing to the bank on the war crimes and the stuff that he's been exposing, they don't want to have the spotlight on them. So of course they're going to try and find some maniacal way to still prosecute this guy. Somehow this guy is still evil for doing journalism. Though it is said that some of us are concerned about it too. Each of the 5 organizations had worked with Mr. Assange in 2010 and 2011 during the events at the heart of the criminal case. WikiLeaks, which obtained leaked archives of classified American diplomatic cables and military files, gave early access to troves to traditional news outlets, which published articles about notable revelations. A spokeswoman for the Times, Daniel Rhodes said that the company's publisher, A.G. Schulzberg, in consultation with its legal department, decided to sign the letter. The newsroom was not involved, she said. The case against Mr. Assange is complicated and does not turn on the question of whether he is considered a journalist, but rather on whether its journalistic style activities of soliciting and publishing classified information can or should be treated as a crime. So this is again, they're trying to twist this around to say, okay, well, we understand that Julian Assange should not be held captive and tortured in some inhumane way. We understand that, but we still want to try and prosecute this guy because as a corrupted news organization owned by corporations and advertised by the military-industrial complex, we still need to find this guy evil. We still have to find a way to rain down on this guy. rather than just admitting to the American public and to the rest of the world that this is a person who is a publisher who released this information based on the fact that this is information that the public should be aware of. That all these diplomatic cables and military files are your tax dollars. And that the public should know where your tax dollars are going towards and who they're killing and all the war crimes that it's helped funded and all the corporations and companies that have corruptedly been involved in this. The letter comes as Attorney General Merrick Garland has sought to rein in ways in which the Justice Department has made it harder for journalists to do their jobs. In October, he issued new regulations that ban the use of subpoenas, warrants, or court orders to seize reporters' communication records or demand their notes or testimony in an effort to uncover confidential sources in leak investigations. Mr. Assange and WikiLeaks catapulted to global fame in 2010 when he began publishing classified videos and documents related to the United States war and its foreign relations. It eventually became clear that Chelsea Manning, a former Army intelligence analyst, had provided the archives to WikiLeaks. She was sentenced to 35 years in prison after a court-martialed trial in 2013. President Barack Obama commuted most of her remaining sentence shortly before leaving office in January of 2017. Ms. Manning's disclosures amounted to one of the most extraordinary leaks in American history. They included about 250,000 State Department cables that revealed many secret things around the world, dossiers about Guantanamo Bay detainees being held without trial, and logs about significant events in the Afghanistan and Iraq wars that divulge, among other things, that civilian casualties were higher than official estimates. So, again, this is the things that they're trying to prosecute him on. Not the fact that he's some sort of hacker, not the fact that he, exposed the Hillary Clinton emails. It's because he is exposing the globalized corruption of the military-industrial complex, which is something that Dwight D. Eisenhower warned in the 50s, for God's sakes. And this publisher, Julian Assange, managed to create a website to remind us how dangerous these organizations are, to remind us how dangerous and corrupted and evil and maniacal and tyrannical that these oppressive regimes are really dominating against ordinary citizens. And it's surprising that the New York Times is actually willing to try to admit to the fact that maybe this is wrong. Maybe trying to, torture this guy and prosecute him and paint him as some nefarious ghoul. Maybe that's not exactly what we should be doing, because it's going to bite us soon. What happens when the New York Times publishes something that goes against the grain of the government, which by all means is probably never going to happen, because the New York Times are good boys and girls. They're good little children. They do exactly what their corrupted owners do. They do exactly what their corrupted owners say. But this goes against, that's why this is such a big deal. It's such a big deal because this is about tyrannical forces, about individual principles and rights, and going against a person who's publishing information, critical information that the public should be aware about, should not be deemed as a crime. Because if that's deemed as a crime, what does that say for the state of the First Amendment? What does that say for the state of the freedom of the press? What does that say for the state of journalism if Julian Assange is completely gone off the map? If they do extradite him, if they do prosecute him. That's why this is such a big deal. And I also just want to add this too, because Matt Orfalea, who's a famous videographer, montage person on YouTube. He does a lot of great, interesting work. Uh, Put this little thing together about Julian Assange and how newscasters are even scratching their heads on why exactly Julian Assange is being prosecuted. And it kind of ties into this. So I wanted to show it here. So take a look at this.
To defend basic principles like free speech or a free press, you have to defend people you may find distasteful, maybe even people you loathe. And with that in mind, we need to talk about Julian Assange.
I think these espionage charges against the WikiLeaks guy are a huge deal and a very dark development.
They have him locked up in the highest security prison, 23 hours a day in solitary confinement.
This has been going on for a long time, and it shows how dumb we are that it took us a very long time, years, to ask the obvious question: what exactly did Julian Assange do wrong? Everyone, all good people hate Julian Assange. What was his crime exactly?
It is not the same kind of criminal allegation they made against him in the initial indictment. It's not some hacking computer crime like they originally charged him with. These new charges are trying to prosecute Assange for publishing
Things that other people sent to him. He was a journalist. He was an editor. That's literally true.
And newspapers and magazines and investigative journalists publish secret stuff all the time. That is the bread and butter of what we do.
Julian Assange brought you information that you had a right to know.
I would also point out the irony that the US government has spent the past decade pursuing Assange while failing to prosecute any of the alleged war crimes by US military personnel that Assange and WikiLeaks revealed.
Relating to two horrible wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, that we absolutely should not be a part of.
What this is now a novel legal effort to punch a huge hole in the First Amendment.
The first part of our Bill of Rights.
By labeling it criminal espionage to publish secret stuff.
This case is about criminalizing freedom of speech.
A new legal doctrine, a whole new legal lane for the US government that's never existed before, where anyone who publishes stuff the government doesn't want published gets prosecuted by the Justice Department under the most serious statutes imaginable, facing long prison terms for doing it.
He's being charged for what journalists do every day.
This is, to put it bluntly, wrong, unconstitutional, and downright tyrannical.
What he published was truthful information that the American public and the world had the right to see. He's a publisher, just like we are.
If Assange's publishing of classified information runs afoul of the law, so does the work of just about every single press outlet, this one included.
It would fundamentally change the balance of power between the people and our government.
That was incredible. That was definitely incredible. And just like that quote said at the end, like, if Assange loses, we all lose. And that's why this is such a big deal. And that's why it is amazing that finally, you know, after all these years, like, it's a little too late, but at least, you know, better late than never, I guess. Better late than never, that the New York Times and some news publications are willing to actually look at this and go, this could actually potentially affect me. This could actually affect me and my journalistic integrity and how it looks on me if I don't report this, if I don't mention about this, that a man being prosecuted and tortured in a facility and, you know, fed through this, you know, corrupted criminal charges for being a publisher, for exposing the inhumane, unspeakable war crimes that our world has been a part of. Like, it shows a lot. It shows a lot. And if Julian Assange goes down, what does that say for the principles of freedom of speech? What does it say for the principles of freedom of the press? What does that say for the principles of anything? What does that say for humanity if we start torturing a publisher because one oppressive government does not favor him? He's not, you know, exposing the crimes that governments have been doing to people. And he exposed a lot of information. He did a lot of revelations. Like, it's incredible. And I don't think there's anyone out there that could top him or could, you know, even hold a candle to someone like Julian Assange. There's many interesting people that have aspired to him. There's a lot of amazing journalists and people that are doing excellent work every day. But no, there is no other Julian Assange. And if he goes down, we all go down, which is why this is such a big deal. This is why we got to partake in, bringing the notion, bringing awareness, hashtag free Assange, and support this guy for the work that he's done for us, the work that he's done to expose and bring us information and bring us into hindsight of the criminality, the corrupted cabal of governments and regimes and organizations and companies and intelligence communities. He did all the Vault 7 material that exposed a lot of information. So this is all vital for society to grow. And better late than never, I guess, that news organizations are finally starting to chime in. I guess they can, they can sweep this under the rug for any longer. So we'll see how this goes.